KXIVM.
Hello and... Oh, wait, that started looping. Why is it looping? There you go. All right, I'm going to start again. Ready? Welcome to another episode of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. It is the end of week 1 of the IPL. We have lots to uncover. I'm your host this week, Ashwin. I'm joined by my co-podcaster, DJ, who is in England. DJ, how's your weekend been going, man? Did you get up to anything last night?
It's been going pretty well, actually, apart from on the fantasy front. We visited some friends yesterday, which is allowed under the rules over here. And we had some a few drinks and here I am on Sunday afternoon. A little bit worse for the wear, but here we go.
At least you're here, you're up, you're recording a podcast with us. So we are super excited. As always, IPL is our favorite time of year. For those of you who weren't able to tune in last week, for the second half of the show, we should be joined by 3 fans, and we're going to be talking about the Royal Challengers Bangalore. So RCB has gotten off to a decent start this year, and we're going to talk about that team, a little bit about what it's like being a fan of a team that's never won. I guess we did Punjab last week and Bangalore this week. So we're starting with fans who have not yet seen the trophy, but it should be very exciting.
And we're doing Delhi next week, I think.
Oh, didn't you plan this on purpose? Is that how you did
planned. It's all planned.
It's all planned out. I just
it's pointless doing it at the end, right? Like when they're knocked out. So I go with the team.
Delhi's got off to a good start, and this is as good an opportunity as we're going to have to talk about. So we've just seen a little bit of a cracking match wrap up between the Rajasthan Royals and the Kings 11 Punjab. So DJ, after what was otherwise a pretty quiet, pretty slowish week, I would say, it sounds like the Rajasthan Royals have just decided we want to up the ante again in Sharjah. Like, if you can sense the elevated levels of adrenaline in both our voices now, we've just finished watching it. What an outstanding, unbelievable chase, right?
Man, they're still dancing in the aisles in Sharjah, man. It's like the second Super Sunday, which has had a thrilling match with we had the Delhi match, right, which had a super over, and now we've had the highest ever chase ever completed by a team. And in the dramatic fashion in which it happened, like, our emotions were like swinging one way. No. I'm going to let you talk about it, but man, it's just wow. I'm still catching my breath, I think.
Yeah, so really quickly, Punjab, unfortunately, on the losing side of both the Super Sunday matches you mentioned, both played from positions they should have won. So Punjab batted first, 223 for 2. Stunning knock. Mayank Agarwal gets to his first ever IPL century. Rahul with another 50 makes 69. They only lost the 2 wickets pretty late in the game. Pooran had a good finish. So 223. Unfortunately, not a great day with the ball, but we know this is going to be true for Sharjah. It's a tiny ground. And then in the chase of 224, Joss Butler gets out pretty early, 19 for 1. A magnificent partnership with Steve Smith and Sanju Samson. Smith gets to another 50. Samson is batting magnificently. And at the end of the 9th over, at 100 for 1, Steve Smith gets out, 100 for 2. DJ out walks Rahul Tewatia. Okay, I think this is his first year with the Rajasthan Royals. He used to play for Delhi before. I remember him as kind of an old school leg spinner, kind of an Amit Mishra backup, etc. I don't distinctly remember his batting ability. So talk me through that. When we saw Tewatia walk in while Samson was batting well, what was your thought process?
So credit where credit goes. Tewatia bowled well in the last game, and Achal, one of our listeners, actually sent in a video of his all-round ability, and Achal's actually played against him at school level, apparently. So really rated him. And he was really disappointed that he wasn't in his fantasy team. But, Tewatia walks out and you're just like, okay, you've got Robin Uthappa, you've got Jofra Archer, you've got Riyan Parag. They're all batsmen, right? And Tewatia, we haven't really seen him do very much with the bat. Okay, that video is the net. The net, it's different, right, in the net. So I was like, okay, maybe they want a left-hand, right-hand combination. And the commentary at the time as well was saying, well, maybe sometimes the left-hand, right-hand combination may be overrated. And so we were like, okay, fine. If it comes off, it comes off. What's the worst that can happen? He could score 8 of 5 or 10 of 7. And that's still okay. But man, he got stuck against the 2 spinners. He got stuck against, I think, Bishnoi and Ashwin were bowling. And he just got completely stuck. He couldn't hit it off the square. At one point, the commentary was making jokes that he can't even clear the inner circle, right? And you could see it was affecting Samson, who was batting like a dream up until then. He was just hitting sixes for fun, just kind of hitting through the line, and it was incredible. And I'm going to let you talk through about the drama that went down.
So he's at the end of 15 overs, he's batting at 14 of 21. You're already feeling like, oh my gosh, is this guy going to lose the game? Samson comes on, Maxwell is bowling. Samson hits 2 effortless sixes. And then on the third ball of the 16th over, he hits it to long off and basically declines the single. Now you're at 2 down. I don't think in my life ever I've seen a batsman batting with a number 4 on the other end turn down a single. That's how bad Tewatia was batting, right? In our WhatsApp group, in our Discord, in multiple other chats people are having, everybody's saying, oh my God, it hurts to watch Tewatia. So 14 of 21, Samson keeps going. Eventually Samson gets out. Uthappa walks in. There are 3 overs left. And Tewatia is batting on 17 of 23 balls. Okay, you needed over 11 runs and over this whole match. He's batting at 17 of 23 balls. At this point, DJ, we thought it was done, right? 51 of 18 with a guy batting on 17 of 23 and a new batsman on the other end.
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. And we were like, I hope he gets a few out of the middle so he doesn't feel too bad, because you said it, man. He's a number 4 that's coming at number 4, and like Sanju Samson is turning down singles like he's a tail ender. Now, the only other person I've known who's done that is MS Dhoni to Raidu in the last over. But this is nowhere close to the last over. They've got like 6 overs to go, right? So,
unbelievable. So, all right, we're not going to belabor this. 51 needed of 18. Sheldon Cottrell runs in. 6, 6, 6, 6, dot ball, 6. Suddenly, a guy who's 17 of 23 is batting on 47 of 29. The next ball he faces in the next over after Jofra hits 2 more sixes is another 6. He gets to half century in just 30 balls, eventually getting out on 53 of 31. You know, the rest is history. Archer hit 2 sixes. Karan hits a 4 to finish it off. Rajasthan gets home with 3 balls to spare, chasing 223, the highest ever chase in IPL, right? Absolutely unbelievable. Like, what happened? How did a guy of 17 or 23 just come out and become 47 of 29? And what I want to ask and what we want to talk really quick is there's been a lot of debate. Akash Chopra put a tweet out on this past Friday saying, hey, should teams be allowed to strategically retire a batsman? So much conversation. People saying, let's just get hit wicket or just start running and get Mankaded, or you know, some people, Rohan Gavaskar, the commentator on air, was saying, just dance down the track on every ball. If you connect, you'll get runs. If you don't, you'll get stumped. You're out. And this guy just stayed. He stayed, and then eventually became the match winner, right? So what does that tell you about cricket, T20, IPL, and this ability to turn things around at any moment, DJ?
So superb, man. I mean, it was, you heard the guy after that. He's like, this is the worst 20 balls I've ever played. He was like 8 of 19 balls before he got even 1 6 away. Interesting point about the retirement, because obviously you were having some banter with Akash about that. And I mean, it's an interesting concept in T20 cricket particularly, because it's such a short game. If you have one guy just sucking the life out of the game, which is what we thought Tewatia was doing, it would be interesting for a team to be allowed to retire him, right? Like we've seen Jadeja, it happened to him in 2009 in the World Cup. We saw it at Yuvraj Singh in the 2014 final against Sri Lanka, just got stuck, couldn't get going, 11 of 21. We saw it last year with Robin Uthappa. We saw it again happen recently. I mean, with Tewatia, of course, it was very, very stark, and he's almost an unknown player, right? So, I don't know, man. It'll be an innovation. It'll be interesting. But your counter was even better. Have a baby over as well. If a Lungi Ngidi gone for 20 of the first 3, you should be allowed to take him off and get someone else to complete that over.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how the rest of the IPL goes. This is what we love about it. We're excited. The IPL is here. I mean, honestly, I'm not complaining. We had a monster first weekend, but a few slow games in the middle, which we're going to talk about. And then we had another amazing Sunday. So from my selfish standpoint, I get to watch the weekend games. I'm loving it. DJ, is it fair to summarize that the opening weekend was absolutely stunning, right? Mumbai versus Chennai, Delhi, Punjab, which we talked last week, super over. Bangalore then taking it over Hyderabad. And then it sort of slowed down a little in terms of closeness of matches, right? Wednesday's match, Mumbai won by almost 50 runs. Thursday's match, Punjab won by almost 100. Friday's match, Delhi won by 44. So the closeness of the game started to, and Saturday's match, by the way, KKR cruised home with 3 overs to spare. So fair to say that after a really kind of high energy opening weekend, the closeness of the matches kind of started to disappear a little?
Yeah, probably fair. Still, the games have been interesting. There have been some incredible performances over the past week. And sometimes I almost regret that we're not a daily podcast, man, because I would love to just have the time to put this together every day, just chatting about the games, because there's so much to talk about, right? So, yeah, lots of great performances this week. And of course, there was the untimely passing of Dean Jones, the Australian cricketer, coach, and commentator. Really sad. He died of a heart attack in Mumbai as part of the IPL commentary team out there for Star Sports. Brett Lee was involved in trying to revive him. Really, really sad news that coming out this week with the passing of Dean Jones. I mean, he was one who really revolutionized how one-day cricket was played. He famously ran very quickly between wickets. He was great at fielding, super athletic, super fit. I mean, his podcast with Watson, I think, is definitely a must listen to. But yeah, condolences to the Australian cricketing community and his family in particular. Also, of course, there's always controversy, right, at the IPL, and there was the Sunil Gavaskar comment about Anushka bowling to Virat Kohli, which raised a few eyebrows. Anushka reacted pretty badly to it. I mean, to be fair, she has been trolled by Indian cricket followers and Indian cricket fans for ages. I mean, they blamed her in 2015 for Kohli getting out to a pull shot, which is ridiculous. But I mean, Gavaskar came back and said this has been slightly blown out of proportion. It has been a slowish week on the cricketing front, but there's always something going on about the IPL.
Yeah, and there's no shortage of conversation. This is a good plug for our Twitter handle at One Tip One Hand and our Discord channel, which you can find in the show notes and on our Twitter page as well, where there's lots and lots of daily conversation with other fans, other listeners, but also obviously us as well. We're engaged there. So if you want more than weekly action and want more from Edges and Sledges than weekly, join us on any of those channels, and we talk about it every day. But hey, let me start with a recap of the points table. I'm looking at it now at the time of recording. Right at the top is a team I'm not used to seeing at the top, and they're called the Delhi Capitals. 2 matches, 2 wins, positive net run rate of 1.1, and 4 points on the board. The only team at the end of week 1 to have 4 points. DJ, does that make you feel pretty good? Does it give you that warm, fuzzy feeling inside as a Delhi fan for the 13th year now?
Yes, it does. But, with being a Delhi fan, and I'm sure we'll talk to the RCB fans as well about this, it's there's always you're a little wary of being too happy and too confident, right, when your team is doing well, because their highs are high, but their lows are really low as well. So cautiously optimistic, I would say.
Yeah, well said. This is the same thing I've been saying all week. It's like, I think we've been here before where we start with 2 wins and then the season goes south. But lots to uncover. We obviously, if you missed it, went through all the highs and lows of the super over that Delhi had in our first game against Punjab, on last Sunday. So we already talked about that. But let's keep going into the other matches of the week, right? So Monday morning, opening weekend kind of dies down a little bit. People are back to work. Sorry, Monday morning for me. I guess it's Monday evening India time. But RCB comes out to bat, and this young guy, Devdutt Padikkal, who we've talked about on the show, there's been a lot of good conversation about, puts on a great 50, makes 56. AB de Villiers comes on, makes 51 of 30. It's like the guy never stopped batting. It's like he's never gone anywhere. But highlight from that match, DJ. So RCB batted first, made 163, and then Bairstow came out and played a good knock, but thanks to a fantastic bowling performance from Yuzvendra Chahal, who, if Varun was here, I'd be rubbing in more. But thoughts on that match? Any highlights? How did you feel seeing Padikkal out there? What was it? Seeing Chahal pick up 3 great wickets. How are you feeling?
Yeah, great. I think we were all kind of rooting for RCB to get off to a good start because we feel the pain of their fans. But yeah, it was great to see Devdutt Padikkal. He kind of hit his strap straight away. Some nice pulls, some nice drives. He looked confident, and it was good to see. And it was good to see that he lived up to the hype, scoring his 50. Eventually being dismissed for 56. And then AB de Villiers, man, what a player. What a player. I mean, that guy just came out, did his thing again. And Johnny Bairstow 61. And at that point, they looked like they were cruising, right? Like with Pandey, one of your favorites, and Bairstow at the crease. It looked like they were going to cruise that chase. And then out comes the match-turning, game-changing Yuzvendra Chahal, who you'd backed as a champion bowler in our preview, right? When Varun said the RCB doesn't have any champions and wanted to play Dale Steyn. And completely changed the game with 3 for 18. What a spell. And Kohli was pretty pumped to start the tournament off with a win, which I don't think they'd done for many years. So good news at that point for the RCB fans.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So, just for the record, when we were doing the RCB preview, Varun specifically said, RCB's shortage is bowling, etc. They should play Dale Steyn. They don't have any match winners in the side. And I made sure I interrupted him to say, hey man, it is unfair on Chahal to not call him a match winner. So He was a match winner in the opening game of the tournament. Obviously gives me plenty to gloat about. But good start for the RCB. DJ, we're going to spend a little more time talking about this second match because the rest of the week, like I said, wasn't as exciting. But first match in Sharjah, Sanju Samson, who always seems to get off to a great start in the IPL and has, been great, but been, let's call it inconsistent, comes out, makes a blistering 74 off 32 balls to get Rajasthan to 216 in partnership with his skipper, Steve Smith, who made a great 69. Let's talk about that chase, DJ. It feels like you and I have talked about it all week. But do you want to walk me through Chennai's strategy and their chase?
I'm not sure I'm qualified to talk you through that strategy, but also Archer's 27 of 8, right, at the end of the Rajasthan innings. Really good impetus towards the end. And I think that actually, and Ngedi's meltdown in that last over, man. And I mean, that turned out to be the difference between the two teams almost in the end of it. So Ngedi went for 56 runs in 4 overs. And I don't know how many came off that last over, but it felt like it was a lot. And so the CSK chase, obviously you're talking about Dhoni coming in at number 7, right? And yeah, I mean, they didn't get off to a flyer of a start, Vijay and Watson. And we spoke about this last week, and I said Vijay doesn't look match fit. I mean, he doesn't look like he's cricket fit. He's looking physically fit. And I think that's been borne out by what's gone on in the last week or so, right? He's just looked rusty. And I'm not sure he's going to keep his place. Watson, he kind of hit a few sixes, but he was out. Then Faf was stuck as well. I mean, eventually his numbers look okay. He's striking at 194, but a lot of that came at the back end. He was striking at around a ball for a long time. And then, like he'd done previously, he promoted Sam Curran, who got 17 of 6, which, I mean, it's a strike rate of 283. So if you don't count the ball that he got out on, he was smashing it. Right? Rituraj Gaikwad came out stumped for a duck of his first ball on debut. Unfortunate. The second debut turned to disappoint in that game with Yashasvi Jaiswal not scoring many either. And then Jadhav comes out, scores 22 of 16. And I mean, I totally understand what you're saying, right? I mean, Dhoni of old, we would have expected him to be up there after maybe Sam Curran, right? Batting 5. You can take a punt with one guy, sending him out there and see if he can raise the run rate, which Sam Curran did, to be fair to him. But then you'd expect the Dhoni of old to come out then. But later we found that he wasn't really confident. It was the start of the tournament for him. And he was I think he was kind of backing the other guys to do the job for him. So I think he was rusty as well, and he probably knew it. And so the masterstroke that was hailed in the last game of promoting Jadeja and Sam Curran above himself kind of backfired him, with everyone just piling on saying, why didn't he bat? And then you had people defending him. You had like Akash Chopra writing articles about his captaincy and why it was not a bad move for him to come out to bat at 7. But frankly, I mean, Dhoni of old, and that's the point, that we are comparing him to the old Dhoni, right? Who would have taken the chase would have taken the responsibility for it and tried to see his team home. He ended up with 29 of 17 eventually, with 3 sixes, but it was too little too late. And I mean, it was almost like they were in damage control mode, trying to reduce the net run rate. So for CSK fans, that's going to be a really disappointing game, in that if they'd gone a little bit harder, a little bit earlier, the game could have been closer. And I think rightly, Dhoni took the flak for coming down so low, right? I mean, Jadhav above Dhoni in no universe makes any sense. Neither should you be sending Gaikwad above yourself. Curran, fine. Even Jadeja, if you want to promote him, they're big hitters. They're known to be big hitters, right? You can't send Gaikwad and Jadhav above yourself and expect to win the game. So rightly so, I think he copped some flack for it. I know you were outraged on Discord, which was pretty amusing for me. But I think absolutely right. And we saw him come up the order in the next game, right, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah, to be honest, I was all ready to get into this discussion with you, but to be totally transparent, the kind of pain and the disappointment in your voice as a Dhoni fan, as a Chennai fan, says everything.
But there's no discussion to be had. You're right. I mean, he should have batted above. What's he doing batting behind a debutant and Kedar Jadhav, for God's sake? I mean, It makes no sense.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's been interesting because at the time we're recording this, Chennai's played 3 games and they've lost 2 chasing. And in neither situation did it seem like they were ever in the chase. So, DJ, I don't want to get into more specifics of that. Let me just ask you, at this point, you've pretty publicly always said Delhi is your main team, but you want CSK to do well. You're such a big Dhoni fan. If you had to pick a second team you support, it's CSK. Are you worried for them? Like, are you nervous that as you look at the combination, you see some of the things you mentioned? No Raina. Faf has slotted in beautifully at 3, but then they don't seem to have the lower order hitting prowess if Dhoni's not playing that role. Watson looks a little shaky. Vijay doesn't look like he belongs. Are you nervous for CSK, or is this like, hey, it's been 6 months since anybody played cricket? It's been 3 games. They will bounce back. Dhoni is just so good at his job as a leader that he will bounce back.
So I think the first game kind of covered a few cracks in their lineup, right? And I think you've hit the nail on the head. I'm a little bit nervous about the CSK, although they've lost this game and they've lost the game to Delhi Capitals, which frankly, the Delhi Capitals game, I don't mind CSK losing to for obvious reasons. But I think the gap that's showing up so starkly is the Raina gap and the Harbhajan Singh gap, right? Like those two guys who've been key to their campaigns in the last, Raina from the very start, but Harbhajan in the last few years since he moved from Mumbai. I think those cracks are starting to show. I mean, playing Vijay, playing Gaikwad, you have place for probably one guy. No Ambati as well. So they've played these 2 games that they've lost without like a core team, so to speak. When Ambati Raidu played, they won that game, right? So you're playing without 3 of your first string players. You're playing without Harbhajan Singh. There's no Tahir, so I think they've got that a little bit wrong. They probably need to bring in an Indian quick and play Tahir because, I don't think their bowling is looking that great. So it's almost a Chennai B team almost that's been out on the park for the last 2 games, and I wouldn't be that worried yet. They've got a break for a week, maybe a little bit of tired bodies, and maybe just a bit more conditioning coming back into the stuff next week. But they'll need to correct the slide quickly because, as we know, with the IPL, momentum plays a big part. And if they are to qualify for the playoffs again, which they'll need at least 7 or 8 wins for, right? They need to get their act together quickly.
Yeah, I think well said. So it's still early stages in the tournament. I think if there's one team who strategically, tactically, and in terms of experience has the ability, it's going to be CSK. So where we are at this point, you had a pretty decent knock from Shreyas Iyer early on, and then Marcus Stoinis was the key highlight of the first match. Second match. You had Rayudu performing well so far. You'll see where I'm going with this. You had Padikkal performing well. We had Samson play an innings of his life. And then in the next game, Rohit Sharma came out. So far, it's been an Indian top order batsman masterclass, kind of, right? Rohit Sharma came out, made 80 of 54. Mumbai kind of coasted. DJ, just let me, we don't have to get too deep in this match. It was an easy match, Mumbai versus KKR. But a lot of the conversation right away was KKR doesn't look like contenders this year. They just looked so weak against Mumbai. Of course, since then, they won another game, etc. What do you think KKR needs to do to be more competitive in this lineup? We talked in our preview how they're on paper, they're a rock solid side, but some questionable decisions, right? So right after the day Dhoni came in at 7, Karthik walked in at 3. Was that the right call, or how does is Karthik still figuring out how to use Owen Morgan, who is an outstanding limited overs international batsman, but has sort of flattered to deceive in the IPL historically?
So I think they've got their team selection a little bit off, and I think some of it is driven by Nareen not doing that well with the bat anymore. People have found out that he's weak against the short ball, and it's all over the television, it's all over the newspapers that he hasn't scored runs against short bowling, and so teams have been targeting him with that, right? And if you've got him and Shubman Gill up the order, Nareen's got to go, right, from ball 1. So I don't mind Karthik batting at 3 or 4 or 5. I think that 3, 4, 5 has got to be pretty fluid in T20 cricket anyway. But they've got to figure out what their lineup is and to get the right players in at the right time. I mean, you're getting Russell in when there's no chance of winning the game. And he was bowled by Bumrah. I mean, like incredible little first 3 overs from Bumrah, right? We'll talk about the 4th over in a little bit. But I think they need to get their combination right. I think perhaps a Nayak or similar needs to be dropped, and Rahul Tripathi needs to come in to open the batting. So you have Shubman Gill and Tripathi opening the batting, 2 proper batsmen, because the Nareen thing hasn't worked in the last 2 games. I'm not sure it's going to work going forward either. And Morgan, I mean, great player. Nitish Rana, perfect for 3. So Karthik should probably just hang back at 4, 5, even 6, depending on whether Russell comes up above him, right? But what we did see is that Pat Cummins could bat. And wow, if there was ever a person that you thought could take Bumrah apart, it would not have been Pat Cummins, man, on your list of people. Wow. He just smashed Bumrah everywhere in that last over.
So did Cummins kind of prove that he can play at 7? Because for me, he's an outstanding batsman at 8, right? Like I think if he bats at 8, He gives them depth. He gives them hitting. Yeah, you can maybe promote him. But consistently, does he belong at 7? Because if he's at 7 for me, with Russell at 6, and one of your top 5 is Sunil Narayan, KKR's tail is just too long. But do you disagree with that?
So I think they took a punt in the next game, batting him one spot above, right? Because they dropped that extra batsman. But they still opened with Nareen. So maybe the answer is for him to continue to bat down the order, maybe 7 or 8, but with Nareen to come down the order and a proper batsman to open the batting. That is what I would prefer KKR to do strategically, because I'm not sure he's a proper number 7. He's definitely a good enough number 8, but I mean, it then goes back to the debate: are you really going to put your team around the number 7, and how important that is in T20 cricket where you've got 20 overs to play?
Like you said, I think teams have started to figure out Sunil Narayan. I don't know if he will continue to open or bat at the top of the order for very long in this tournament, but I also don't know who they're going to partner with Shubman Gill. So we can jump ahead and talk about Saturday's game where Shubman Gill put up a masterclass in chasing. Absolutely brilliant. The Sunrisers obviously didn't get enough runs on the board with 142, but Gill came out and looked magnificent in his 70, paced his innings well, almost like he knew exactly how much to get and what pace he needed to go. And they, Morgan came and backed him up and they played well. But I don't know who opens with Gill, if not Narayan, because remember, they sold Chris Lynn this year. So it's going to be interesting to see. Maybe Karthik tries to promote himself. Maybe they bring in one of, that Indian batsman slot who was Nikhil Nayak in one game. And then without really giving him a chance to play much, they dropped him and brought in, who did they bring in? They brought in the extra bowler, right? That's when they brought in Nagar Koti. So it'll be interesting to see what KKR does. But I wanted then now, so again, so far, three things have stood out, right? We talked about in this week. MS Dhoni's batting position. Where is he going to play? The second was Indian batsmen, right? So Samson, Rohit, etc. I want to come and talk about one more. Actually, let's do that now. KL Rahul, right? Thursday's game, Kings 11 Punjab versus Virat Kohli's side. They're playing in Dubai, and Rahul comes out and makes the highest ever score by an Indian batsman in IPL, the highest ever score by a captain in IPL history, with 132 of 69 not out. That knock was just such a joy to watch. So 2 things. 1, KL Rahul, the batsman, and 2, RCB, the bowling lineup. DJ, what do you think on both those?
So I think 2 things. 1, I think Virender Sehwag put it very well in his Viru Ki Baithak that RCB bowlers seem to have a vision problem. They thought that KL Rahul's leg stump was his off stump because they seemed to be targeting it. And he just kept hitting it for 6. I mean, it's a well-documented problem. I mean, and I'm sure we're going to ask our RCB fans later in the game about Umesh Yadav and the fun that he brings to the party at RCB. But I mean, just not good enough from RCB on the day, bowling-wise and fielding-wise. Remember, KL Rahul was 77 when he was dropped by Captain Kohli. Relatively simple chance, and then he was 83 when he was dropped again by Captain Kohli, and he's gone on to score another 50 runs after that and completely destroy my fantasy team because for once I missed the transfer deadline, and I told you guys I hope Rahul doesn't score because he was the one I wanted to bring in, and oh my god, he went and scored the highest score ever made by an Indian batsman. So yeah, brilliant innings, just pure clean hitting. When he got into the groove, he got his eye in, and man, he didn't need to worry during lockdown about not being able to pick the line in length because he picked it beautifully, just kept smashing it. Those 6s were humongous. They were going outside the ground, and it was not a small ground, right? It was a pretty big. It was not a Sharjah, that ground.
That was Dubai.
So that's a big ground, right? So yeah. I mean, what an innings by the captain. Obviously, they were hurting after the loss to Delhi, and the captain came to the party, stepped up, and led from the front.
Right. So next game, let's wrap quickly because I want to talk a couple highlights and then fantasy. But CSK versus Delhi, Prithvi Shaw came out after I, of course, captained him in my fantasy in the first game and then decided not to in the second game, and he made a nice looking 64. And then everybody kind of contributed, right? Dhawan batted well, Pant batted well. 175 may have been 10, 15 runs short. But exactly as we saw in the previous game, CSK just seemed to not be able to time their chase correctly. Again, Gaikwad walked in at 4. Again, Jadhav walked in at 5. And Dhoni chose to come in at 6 ahead of Jadeja and Curran. So 3 almost completely different batting orders, 2 of them in chases for CSK. I mean, Delhi's looking good, right? I want to just talk quickly about this has been a very batting-heavy kind of conversation, as has been week 1. But Kagiso Rabada and Anrik Nortje, right? The quick pair from Delhi. picked up 5 wickets between them. They just look really difficult to pick, right? So Delhi obviously has a little bit of a shortage in that one domestic quick bowler slot where they played Mohit in 2 games and they played Avesh. Neither looked great. Ishant Sharma is still battling an injury. But Rabada and Nortje, they're going to be the key for Delhi this year going into the latter stages of the tournament?
Yeah, absolutely brilliant spell from Nortje, right? I mean, I think he picked up 2 wickets, and Rabada as well, perfect as always. Just, super performance for Delhi, and just brilliant bowling. Defended that what we thought was probably 10-15 runs short, right? They defended it with aplomb, and a surprise for Delhi fans to see such clinical performance by their team. Just brilliant, and again, wasn't a great day for fantasy for me, but genuinely, dude, like Delhi over fantasy, as we were discussing, right? Anytime. So, top of the table performance, led by the bowlers and Prithvi Shaw as well, and Akshar Patel. Don't forget, did you see the dismissal that they planned for Shane Watson? It was brilliant.
Yeah, it was actually incredible. I'm glad you brought it up because we all forget it. But 4 overs right in the middle, 1 for 18, including the dismissal of Watson, was just absolutely brilliant from him. So I never give Akshar enough credit, but I'm glad you brought it up. He looked magnificent in there.
Yeah, and he had a noted weakness against Akshar. And Ricky Ponting's face after that catch was taken by Hetmeyer was just a picture. He was like, this is a plan that's come off perfectly. It was just great to watch. And I don't know, Hetmeyer, man, is he going to stick around? What do you think?
I think they're going to back him a little bit more. He has, they pushed Stoinis up to 5, Pant and Iyer batted 3 and 4. So he didn't even bat in the Delhi's second game. So I think they will. You have to believe it's unfair on a cricketer to not get a chance to bat and then get dropped for a combination. It's happened before, but I'm assuming they're going to stick with Hetmeyer, Stoinis, Rabada, and Nortje for a couple more games. And why wouldn't you? It's a winning combination. Yeah, we just crept over the line against Punjab in a super over, but I would stick to that. So at the end of
you bring that up, actually. David Miller's just been dropped today by Punjab without facing a ball in his last game.
I think when your alternative is Joss Butler, who's in the limited overs form of his life, I think that makes more sense. I don't think Delhi has a specific player at the Joss Butler caliber who's sitting on the bench. But anyway, we can spend all day talking about Delhi. We're going to spend the second half of the show talking about RCB. DJ, I want to wrap up the week with what I kind of said. 3 things stood out to me this week that were headline worthy, right? MS Dhoni's batting position, which we've talked. Top order Indian batsmen, right? Mayank did well in the opening weekend. Rahul has done well. Rohit, Samson, Shaw, lots of great Indian batsmen, many of them young, doing well. And then the third is the toss and the decision to kind of chase, right? So remember, outside of the first game, right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every single match, the team won the toss, chose to chase, and then lost chasing. So the team batting first won. Have the captains just read this wrong? Is this a function of the pitches, the ground size, or is it just teams being rusty? Obviously after that, then Warner on the weekend won the toss and chose to bat first, and then he lost batting first. So it's been tough, right? The correlation between the toss and the victory has been much lower than it historically has this IPL. So thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know. I think you came up with an article a couple of years ago saying, is it even relevant to have the toss in T20 cricket anymore? Because everybody just wins the toss and chooses to field. And
yeah, and just by the way, on that, it's on our website, onetopunhand.com. And the point was, captains were winning the toss, choosing to field, and then disproportionately winning because chasing is easier when you knew what target to chase down. And most of that data was from IPLs in India. So that's why I'm specifically asking, do you think it's a UAE factor, or do you think it's kind of teams just being rusty and chasing will eventually become easier?
I think it's actually teams just being rusty almost, because the data is a bit weird. It's a bit skewed. There's no actual trend that one can discernibly pick from that kind of data, because you've had high scores, you've had low scores, you've had middling scores, you've had teams winning batting first when logic dictates that the chasing team should be winning with the dew coming in and the pitch getting easier to bat on with it skidding onto the bat. So it's been a little bit strange, and maybe it's a combination of the UAE pitches and teams being rusty. But I think as the tournament goes on, I think batting first is going to become more prevalent as the pitches get slower. So teams will probably want to bat first and get the best of the conditions before that. But again, today we saw Steve Smith has won the toss and Rajasthan decided to field. So again, they're backing themselves to chase the runs once they know what the score is. Often we've seen teams go too hard while batting first because they don't know what a good score is on these tracks. So I think the first game, the MI-CSK game, was probably an example, right, where they got off to a great start, but then kind of didn't know how much, whether they should be going for 200, whether they should go for 220, whether they should go for 180. So they ended up with 162, which I think you called below par. So I think people need to get used to the conditions as well as playing cricket and chasing those runs under pressure, which is a skill that's picked up only through repeated repetition.
Yeah, very, very well said. I think we'll be back with you guys in a week and we'll have a little more data both on the toss, the players. So obviously, again, as I've said before, IPL is the most exciting time of the year for the Edges and Sledges show. We love putting up shows for you guys. We love discussing it. We are active every day. So I want to wrap up this first section with a fantasy league wrap up. So again, if you're not in our league, it's not too late to join. Check it out in the show notes or in our Twitter handle, etc. We have an Edges and Sledges fan league. There are now 108 teams. I'm disappointed to say I'm doing a little bit worse than I was last week, but oftentimes that happened when the match was going the way I wanted, or when Delhi won, I got no points, but I was happy with that. So in first place, we have a new team up in the lead. Is a team named Abhilash Super Singh. Has done really well. He's got 3,095 points, so it's almost 1,000 ahead of me. Second place is a consistent from last time, is Jay Patan Jay Ali Baba. Third place is Helby216WX, and then fourth place is Akhil's team, the Superstars. So really good. Congratulations, guys. Good start with long tournaments still to go. I will say for the three of us, Varun has just overtaken me, so he's at number 31 in the league. Not great, but better than me. I'm at 39, so I'm pretty close. How much behind him am I? He's 22.47. I'm at 21. Oh yeah, so I'm like 100 points behind him. I'll catch Varun, I'm sure. And then DJ, I had to scroll really far to find you. You are at 59 in the league. So I know you're gonna blame the fact that you forgot to change KL Rahul, etc. But 59, pretty disappointing, man. At least try to be in the top half of our listener league. But that's the joy of fantasy, right? You can claim you know about the sport and still struggle with it a little. So with that brings us to a wrap of the first section. I'm going to do this quickly because I forgot to do it mid-show. I should have used that a couple times in the first half. We got some mixed feedback. Some people love it. Some people hate it. So keep sending it in. We love hearing from you guys. Join us on the second half of the show for a great chat with the RCB fans. And we will continue to do this every week this IPL. We got some fans from a specific team joining us. So thank you very much. Keep watching the IPL. We'll see you on the second half.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another awesome week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Intel, for supporting us. First, right off the bat, want to congratulate Ashton Doctor on celebrating the 300th episode of The Habit Coach. It's a great show. If you haven't been listening to it, listen to it now. And if you listen to it, you can almost go for an entire year with an episode a day. It's really fun. Do definitely check that out. We had Siddharth Roy Kapoor on Gauri Devi Dayal's This Round's on Me. Great conversation over there. Arjun Koladi, the head of sales for Spotify in India, was on Advertising is Dead. Do check that out. Really fun show. Sonali Gupta has been on the network a number of times, was on Uncle Please Sit this week, and she had a great conversation with Joel and Tushar. On Cyrus Says, we had Sumit Basu, the author, fantasy author, one of my favorites. Definitely do check that out. It was Utsav Memorial Week this week on the IVM network. He was on Cyrus Says Cock and Bull on Thursday. He was on Litnama and, of course, his own podcast, Postcards from Nowhere. Do check that out. And one last note before we go. IVM Likes is back, and we've been doing a bunch of interesting conversations about different pop culture things that you might want to check out during the pandemic. Do give it a listen. I'm sure you'll enjoy that. And with that, let me get you back to your show.
Welcome back to the second half of this week's episode. As we've done before, we're excited to be joined by two awesome fans of the game. So this week we have Sreekar and Yashwant joining us, and they are fans of the Royal Challengers Bangalore. So guys, thanks for joining. I must say it takes some guts to show up on a cricket show saying you're fans of the RCB after 12 years of difficult results. So we're going to spend a lot of time talking that again. This is Ashwin. I have DJ with me. But let's start with you guys and just tell us a little bit about yourselves, your journey as Edges and Sledges listeners, and then how and why you became RCB fans. So Sreekar, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and Edges and Sledges.
I'm Sreekar. I'm from Bangalore. I came across this podcast somewhere around this month itself, last year, around September, October. So we had recently moved on to our own house, which made my college further away. And I had to have some, commuting partners. So I found Edges and Sledges, and then it was awesome because there was very little expertise and it was very fun banter and it was very friendly.
DJ, I think that's his way of saying we have very little expertise on this, right? I'm just kidding. I'm just
no, expertise, I mean, you speak a lot less about techniques and such stuff. And it's basically how the game goes, how the players are playing it. So that was very nice. And I started following it ever since. And it's a very nice show. And you're doing a great job.
Thank you, sir. And so you're obviously from Bangalore. So is that just the reason you started supporting RCB? You're young. You would have been very young when the IPL started. Do you remember it kind of from year one?
Yeah. I mean, I was born and brought up in Bangalore. So right from I was 8 and 9 years old, somewhat like that. And since then, I just like RCB, man, from such a long time. So, it's very hard to shift from one base to another base completely. And yeah, ever since it's just RCB, man, forever.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. All right, so Sreekar, obviously from Bangalore, born and raised. Yashwant, tell us a little bit about your story. A, how did you find Edges and Sledges? And B, what is your story as an RCB fan?
Okay, so I think it was around a year and a half ago. And I had no idea about podcasts. I never heard of it, or I didn't know what podcasts were at all. And one of my childhood friends, so they started a podcast. He's one of the co-hosts of the Armchair Cricket podcast. His name is Giridhar. So they had just started a podcast. He told me to just give it a listen, and I kind of enjoyed it. Guys talking about cricket and other stuff. So I used to listen to them quite regularly. And then DJ happened to be one of the guests on one of their episodes, and I think it was the episode wherein he spoke about India's journey in the 2011 World Cup. And I thought DJ was fantastic. I mean, it was brilliant just listening to him, all the emotions of the journey, India. And you could just, I mean, it's 2020 now, but you're transported back to 2011 and those feelings and emotions come back. And so I thought that, okay. And obviously, he did mention about Edges and Sledges in the podcast. So that's how I got around to listening to you guys. And then I started listening to you guys, and I thought you guys had fantastic chemistry. I mean, it was just brilliant listening to you guys. I mean, the thing that makes Edges and Sledges, I think what it is because, I mean, it feels like I'm back in college, and it's me and my friends going out together, sitting on a table, having a drink, and then just talking about sports, whether it's cricket, Formula One. And you have passionate arguments, and then in between you throw all these cheeky Bollywood references and other stuff. And that's what it is. I mean, it's so relatable. And okay, I mean, you talk serious stuff, and at the same time you make it fun. So that's how I got into Edges and Sledges, and I've been a regular listener now for the last year and a half. So that's been
awesome.
my journey.
We love the feedback. Love to hear from you. That's what makes it fun for us. So thank you, and we're excited to have you on the show. So tell us about why you're an RCB fan.
So I've been, though I'm not from Karnataka, I'm basically a Malayali. But I've been born and brought up in Karnataka. And growing up, Rahul Dravid was I was a fan of Rahul Dravid. I mean, Rahul Dravid for me was like what MS Dhoni is to DJ. So it's not just normal, not just a fan of somebody. He was like God to me. And I followed his career, throughout the 90s. And so once the IPL started and Rahul Dravid being the first, I think it was the icon player, that's what they called it. And obviously being from Karnataka, it was a very easy choice for me to start supporting Bangalore. And that's how it is. And it's been one hell of a painful journey. It's been 12 years now. And, and you guys know the feeling better than anybody else. So that's what it is.
Can I just ask you, why did you start? So the Dravid connection is obviously very interesting, Yashwant. But when RCB picked its initial team, people thought it was a test team, right? So were you supporting them even with that? You had Dravid, Kumble, Callis. Who were the other players there? I think you had Peterson, who was a big player, right?
Misbah, Shivnarayan Chandrapol, Wasim Jaffer.
We had Wasim Jaffer in the RCB team.
That's the funny part.
He's a great first-class player, of course. Amazing player, but not a person I thought would play T20 cricket, right?
When McCullum scored 158 in the IPL, the openers for RCB were Rahul Dravid and Wasim Jaffer trying to chase that goal. So you can imagine how bad it was. So that's how it is. Look, when the IPL first came along, you really didn't know what to expect. You didn't know. Okay, you thought, okay, everybody would just, it's a slam bam version of cricket. You don't know what it requires to win a tournament of that magnitude, how it should be played or something like that. So I just went with RCB. It's the place I was from. My favorite player was the captain. And to be fair to RCB, they actually reached the final in the very next edition of the tournament. It was in South Africa. Things were a little bit different. But with mostly that team, may not be, but still Dravid and Kumble and others, they didn't manage to reach the finals. But that's how it's been.
Absolutely. So great story. And I will say, I'll repeat what I said on last week's show as well, but I love, everybody's fans for different reasons, etc. But I love that, like us who have a connection to Delhi, both of you guys have a connection to Bangalore and support it. If a team ends 8th, they end 8th. When they win, which they eventually will, it may take a year, it may take 5, it may take 10, however long it does. That joy, that satisfaction of having supported the same team since year one is going to be great. So this is interesting because the IPL is a relatively younger league, but you guys, it's going to be so great having supported the same team since year one. So Sreekar, let me ask you about the team composition a little for RCB, right? It's funny, we joked about that. I didn't remember, but Dravid, Wasim Jaffer, Misbah, Shiv Narayan, these guys. Now it almost feels like from a batting stand. And by the way, that was probably when you were like 8 years old, right? So I don't remember. I don't know if you remember much or grew up with the players like we did. Sreekar's a little younger than us. But let's talk about kind of the batting now, right? It's almost like they swung the pendulum the other way. So Kohli, obviously, but then AB, they had Gale for a few years who they've since let go. They brought in Finch, Josh Philippe. So have they just gone so batting heavy, so aggressive? And is that a little bit of a weakness for them?
I don't think that's a weakness, but then they have gone batting heavy, but then that's not a weakness. Of course, it's not a weakness. But then I think they've taken up too many foreign slots. That's what I feel. Too many foreign slots in the sense there's, you can't go with an opener again. Like an opener is an overseas player where then what happens is the bowling gets very weak because there's no overseas fast bowlers then. You can have Chris Morris or someone because you're having Finch at the top or Josh Philippe at the top. So they have gone batting heavy, but that's just hampering the bowling in the overseas department is what I feel. They are totally a good side, but then, we always had the death bowling issues, man. Always have the death bowling issues. And hopefully Udana and Morris can sort it out in the second half of the tournament when the pitches get slow. Hoping some good season this time around.
Yeah, absolutely. DJ, did you want to add something? Sorry.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of listener questions in, and a lot of people have written in on Twitter, right? So, and they're asking these questions, and you touched briefly upon you can't have an overseas opener. So I want to get you guys' thoughts on Kohli batting at 3 this year with Aaron Finch opening. So, Yashwant, I'm going to come to you first on this one. What are your thoughts on Kohli not opening the batting this year? And then, Sreekar, maybe you could just build on what Yashwant says as well.
So, as far as I'm concerned, the template for RCB should be 2016 when they actually managed to reach the final. And I don't know who does the strategy for. I thought with Mike Tyson joining RCB, I thought the strategy would be better. Kohli has to open the innings, and it will happen. It's only a matter of, I think, one more failure for Aaron Finch, and then Finch will go out of the team, and then it will end up with Kohli opening the innings. And they've lost 3 matches just trying to get their team fixed. So I have no doubts about it. They should bat at 3. Kohli should open. De Villiers should bat at 3. But the problem is because they picked up Finch in the auction, they actually don't have a middle order batsman. I think the only one is Gurkirat Singh Mann. Other than that, they just have Moeen Ali. And so Moeen Ali and Gurkirat Singh Mann are their only middle order batsmen, which will be a problem. And which might force them to actually continue with the same Kohli at 3 and De Villiers at 4, which will not help RCB at all.
So let me just jump in there, Sreekar. I want to ask you, it sounds like Yashwant is pretty set on Devdutt Padikkal actually opening, right? That was not up for debate as he was talking about it. Do you think that's the right call as well, Kohli and Devdutt to open and then use your overseas slot a little later?
I think Finch and Devdutt are a very good opening pair. I see Devdutt as an opener. I think Finch and Devdutt can't play anywhere else except opening the batting, So my ideal 11 was not at all this one because I never had Josh Philippe in my mind. So I had Finch and Devdutt opening and Virat in 3, AB at 4. And I actually wanted Parthiv Patel to bat at 5 because, he's just a firecracker. Even in the opening, he's a little bit of Sunil Narayan kind of player. He's just there to bang the balls in the starting and just go. So then Washi and then Chris Morris. Chris Morris is a better option, but it takes a foreign slot. But then, Chris Morris was a good option. And Udana. I felt Udana, they're missing out on a death bowler in place of Umesh Yadav. I think you can just swap for Umesh Yadav with someone else. There are a lot of options. But then I felt Udana and Chris Morris could do a better bowling at the death. That's what I felt, yeah.
So I'm going to ask you the question because Ashwin isn't going to ask you. But Gautam Gupta has asked you, why is there an obsession with Umesh Yadav for the RCB? So Ashwin is a big Umesh fan. He even has him in his fantasy team every time.
I am a big Umesh Yadav, the test bowler fan. I've said this maybe 100 times on this show. I think
and with the hairband. He's great with the hairband.
Umesh Yadav with the hairband. Just put on the hairband. He's going to pick up 4 wickets. But I'm a big fan of him as a test bowler. I don't think I would say I'm a huge fan of him in IPL. But go ahead, DJ.
Yeah. So why is RCB obsessed with Umesh Yadav? Yashwant, maybe you first and then Sreekar after that.
Okay. What are the options that they have? So apart from Umesh, they have Siraj. And that is the way they're going to go. I mean, Umesh, was it last year or the year before? He actually bowled very well with the new ball. I mean, he took wickets in virtually every match with the new ball, and then he struggled at the death. And that has been the criticism of him. But the problem this year is, he has not bowled well at all. Giving 4 overs at 40 has become it's just a given thing. They just give 40 or 4 overs, and especially when he doesn't bowl at the death. And that is simply inexcusable. So they are, this is what I feel. They are going to bring Siraj in the next match. And I hope that, he can be better.
Sreekar, do you agree, disagree?
I completely agree. And Umesh Yadav went down the leg. It's just a never-ending love story. He just bowls down the leg, and luckily he can get a wicket or so, but then it's just wide 5-4s. That's it, man. But then I don't think... Siraj and Umesh Yadav are almost the same kind of players. I don't think both of them can bowl that well in the death. And Steyn also. The thing is, this time around, Philippe has taken up one overseas slot, but then he hasn't performed that well. And that is the reason if you had bought someone like a Chris Morris that could also do well in the death and could have taken up that foreign slot and could finish the game also. So Josh Philippe hasn't done well in these 2 games. I think that is the thing which hurt a little bit.
So, DJ, I have a question for you, actually. Right? We have 2 RCB fans on the show. At the time of recording this, it's Sunday. RCB has played 2 games. They've won 1 and lost 1. Punjab has played 2 games, won 1, lost 1. Mumbai has done that. KKR has done that. And then, obviously, RCB has done that. So, is it history or is it the margin of loss against Punjab? Why is there such a negative tone from these guys? And I don't think they're saying anything wrong, but you hear in the voice a little bit of angst. But almost every team is 2 games, won 1, lost 1. They had a good win against Hyderabad. So what is it? Is it the history, you think?
Delhi played 1, played 2 and 1, 2.
Yeah, so we talked about that on the first half of the show. We are loving the current situation as Delhi fans, right at the top of the table. I'm screenshotting this because I don't know how long it'll last, but played 2, 1, 2. But yeah, the point is played 2, 1, 1, lost 1, right? DJ, where's your head on that?
I think the problem with RCB is it's the same old story. Every year, it's the same story, it's the same bowling. We talked about this at the start of the year, right? We talked about bringing in Zampa. You even came up with Chahal and Zampa, Champa and all of that stuff.
I think we were pronouncing it Champa. I was enjoying Champa more.
Oh, it's Champa. It's not Champa. Okay, but it's the same old story. It's a dependence on the top order to score all the runs. AB, Kohli, and when Gale was there, Gale scoring the runs. And then... but the problem is the players just haven't fired. The Dale Steins have not fired. Umesh Yadav is, as Sreekar said, still bowling down leg side. There's no backup in terms of the Indian backup for the pace bowlers. Chahal is still taking wickets, which kind of won them 1 game. But how much will individual brilliance win you games, right? Continuously on a regular basis. So I think the frustration that I'm hearing from these guys is it's the same story with no solution year in, year out. So it's what they say, right? Like, what is the definition of madness? Just doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And that's sadly been the story of RCB.
The problem is even with the squad that they have, I don't think they're playing their best 11. They should have Morris in this. They should have Morris in the team. And playing Josh Philippe at 5 is an absolute waste. Either you open with Philippe or you don't play him. I mean, unless AB doesn't want to keep at all, there's absolutely no point in playing Philippe. And the thing is, I know this is a bit of a controversial take, but the batting actually revolves around AB de Villiers. If he scores, he makes a big enough impact for RCB to win, which is not always the case with Kohli. Kohli tends to bat very well with de Villiers, but if Kohli actually plays well alone, hardly ever does RCB win a match off his own bat. I know it's very controversial me saying that, but if you go through the record, you will see that de Villiers has been their most important batsman in the last how many ever years.
That is definitely a controversial pick, I will say. 973 runs in one season. Nobody else has done that. So anyway, Sreekar, any thoughts to add quickly on that one?
Yeah, quickly on that one is he's right on Josh Philippe batting at 5. It's very simple. Josh Philippe is an overseas slot. He's filling in that overseas slot and he's not performing well. In the same place, Parthiv Patel can play, and then it doesn't fill up an overseas slot when you can bring someone like a Chris Morris or a Uddana for Umesh or someone like that. So the finish is also there, and the death bowling also is sorted out. And the Virat Kohli one, I don't think I'm not agreeing on that because he has done well. He's the highest run scorer in the IPL. And the 900 odd runs was the crazy year, 2016. So I don't agree to that one. But then, he has done well with AB and Gale, where a lot of runs are scored. But then, he has to fire this time. He has to have a year where 500 to 600 runs have to be scored from him. And death bowling, it's just a death bowling, when they're playing, when they're bowling first, in the death overs, they just concede like 30 runs in last 2 overs, 30 runs in last 2 overs. Then the momentum is already shifted. They're not coming with a good mindset to bat. So that's hurting. When they're bowling first, I think the death overs have to be solved. I think after the wicket gets a little slower, maybe they can try someone like Uddana. I'm very excited about Uddana.
Yeah, Sreekar's brought him up a few times, so it'll be interesting to see now if he gets a slot in this game. So, All right, DJ, before we wrap up, any other kind of rapid listener questions we want to ask these guys?
Yeah, we've got some controversial ones, so I'm going to quickly ask you guys these questions. So, Sreekar, maybe I'll come to you for this one. Joginder Singh Shekhawat has written in. He's asked, should Kohli give up his captaincy for RCB's better future? And I'm going to add on to that. If he does give it up, or if he has to give it up, or he's forced to give it up, who will take over from Kohli? Who's the successor on the RCB captaincy front?
Firstly, I don't think so. He has to give up his captaincy. He has done well as a captain too. There's nothing he hasn't done well completely. The thing is, if RCB is losing the game, they're losing it with a higher margin, which is affecting their net run rate. That is the thing. The losses are always the big losses, and the wins are always the big wins. I think that's the problem. But I don't think Kohli should give up the captaincy. He has done well for India, and he has done well for RCB also. So I don't see a point in giving up the captaincy.
Sorry, DJ, the one thing I'll mention, since Sreekar mentioned that, there was a great stat posted by Cricinfo yesterday, where in the history of the IPL, 8 times, one batsman has outscored the entire opposing team. 8 times, okay? RCB was involved in all 8 of those matches. Probably surprisingly, by the way, 5 of them was the RCB batsman outscoring the other. So big wins, right? AB de Villiers made 129 against Gujarat. They got all out for 104. Virat made 109 that same game. Chris Gayle has outscored the entire team twice. And then Dravid, interestingly, got 66 runs in the match when Rajasthan was 58 all out in the second season, right? So the other three matches were the opposite, one of which was KL Rahul this week making 132 against RCB getting all out for 109. So I think very interesting insight, Sreekar, about winning big and losing big. There's very few close games with RCB. So DJ, back to you.
And I was just going to drill down on that a little bit more. Do you think Kohli is a good captain? He hasn't got the results for you guys. So I can see Yashwant shaking his head. So maybe I'll go to him on this one. What are your thoughts on Kohli, the RCB captain? I know there's already chatter on the India front about splitting the captaincy with Rohit. And there's a whole make Rohit captain camp going on, which I'm not sure I necessarily agree with. But what are your thoughts on Kohli, the RCB captain?
My opinion is diametrically opposite to Sreekar. And let me just say this just for the record, because I am a Kohli fan. So let me put that on record first. But you wouldn't call bowling Shivam Dube or giving Shivam Dube the 20th over of an innings really smart captaincy. I mean, they've had Corey Anderson bowling in the death to MS Dhoni in the last couple of years and getting smashed all over the place. Washington Sundar is deemed good enough to bowl 4 overs for India. But whenever he plays for RCB, he hardly ever bowls 1 or 2 overs. I mean, he just doesn't have the confidence in him. Then why actually pick him? Do not pick him. Pick another player. I mean, I don't think he has confidence in any of the bowlers. It's not a question about whether he inspires people or not. On the strategy front, there are a lot of questions when Kohli captains. And, obviously we are not players. We don't go out on the team and play. But there are some decisions that are very puzzling when you see on a cricket screen. Like, I don't know. I would keep somebody else. I would keep somebody for the 20th over. I would definitely not keep Shivam Dube for the 20th over and ask him to bowl to KL Rahul. I'm sorry, that is just not smart captain.
Is it a lack of support on the field, or are there any other kind of leadership figures in the RCB team that? I mean, you had that in the India team. You had Kohli, you had Rohit, you had Dhoni, the brains trust, so to speak, right? Like the senior players. Is it a lack of those senior players around Kohli that's causing this, you think?
I really don't know the answer to that. One, Kohli is a larger-than-life figure. I mean, he has such a dominating personality. Obviously, Aaron Finch is the captain for the Australian limited overs teams. And he is
Moeen Ali captained England recently.
Yeah,
he
is actually considered quite a good captain also, Aaron Finch. I mean, it just may be that he's just come into the setup this year and he doesn't want to ruffle too many feathers by going out and, suggesting, or, it might be just a question of lack of resources. But, there are some decisions you just cannot forgive as an RCB fan. I mean, come on. Every single year we end up with the same result and it's just frustrating. I don't know. There is no ready-made, replacement for Kohli at the moment in RCB. So I can't even say, I don't know if Aaron Finch is going to turn out to be a good captain or not. I really don't have enough. And the thing is, who's going to bell the cat? Who's going to tell Kohli that you cannot be the captain for RCB? And I'm sure if he's not the captain, if he's sacked as the captain of RCB, he will obviously not, he'll be playing for a different IPL team the next year. I mean, that's what I think.
I think that is probably as good a note as any for us to wrap this discussion on. I will say, one win, one loss, but plagued with selection concerns, talking about captaincy. This feels like the RCB way. I've said it publicly before. I really hope they do well. I would love if this season ends with RCB reaching the finals and losing to Delhi Capitals. I'm putting that out on the record. I'm probably going to say that about every team, though. But guys, before I let you go, predictions for the season, right? So we're 2 matches in for RCB. Sreekar, let's start with you. Where is RCB going to finish this year?
Somewhere middle of the table. Maybe playoffs or very close and they don't get to playoffs is what I feel.
So 4 or 5, let's go with that, right? Yashwant, do you disagree? Are you a little more optimistic or more negative?
Man, that's what you call a fan, With all the criticisms, you just have to be optimistic. So I am going to say that they're going to squeeze into the top 4. They're going to finally get the squad team settled and somehow they're going to squeeze in the top 4. And then it's just one day at a time. So hopefully we will beat the Delhi Capitals and lift the cup. So that's what it is.
Guys, thank you. It's been a pleasure speaking to you both. You're playing Mumbai Indians tomorrow, Monday, when the podcast releases. I'm sure you guys are going to be watching that game. But I mean, it's been great having you guys. And I love the disagreement, right? It's exactly what we have on the show. I mean, we're constantly disagreeing about what Dhoni is doing, what Rohit's doing, what Kohli is doing. So it's super to see that our listeners are people who are just like us. And thank you for making the time to come on the show. And we wish you guys all the best. And as Ashwin said, we will see you hopefully in the playoffs. And it's great to see support for a team. You guys have probably done a little bit better than the Delhi team, having made the finals a few times. Just give us 2020. It's been a weird year.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thanks for being on the show.
It's been awesome being here.
Thank you, DJ. Thank you, Ashwin, for having me on the show. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
great chat.
guys.
Thanks, guys.
Great to speak.
Right. That brings us to the end of this week's episode of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. The IPL is alive and kicking. Awesome week one. Lots of great highlights. Lots of, I'd say pretty much every team at this point except CSK fans seem to be really excited about their team's chances, which is what we love about the IPL. If you aren't already, follow us on social media. We're at One Tip One Hand on all big platforms. Like I've said before, we have a great Discord channel, awesome chat happening during the games, lots of great fantasy cricket banter, lots of great, just sharing of memes and news and just good chat, great analysis. We will be back next week with another set of great fans to talk about their team. Until then, keep watching the IPL, engage with us on social media, and we'll see you in a week's time.
रिश्ते में तो हम तुम्हारे पॉडकास्ट लगते हैं. नाम है फुटबॉल शुटबॉल.
Presenting Football Shortball, a show about three friends discussing our favorite game over a beer. Sometimes three, maybe even five. Hi, I'm Shiva, and with me are my two sidekicks, Gaurav Sapre and Karthik Iyer.
Sidekick? You mean like Batman's Robin or Van Persie Robin?
No, I mean like Alexis Sanchez, but with a little more skill than just playing the piano.
Ha! Just shows how the best players at Arsenal are mere bench warmers at United.
Oh, thank you, Iyer. But you're a Fulham supporter, so whenever you say anything to support me, I question my beliefs.
Just like how Griezmann would say, एक बार मैंने जो decision ले लिया, तो मैं अपने आप की भी नहीं सुनता.
Banter aside, we will talk match reports, transfer rumours, top controversies, fantasy football picks, and so much more. So grab a beer and tune in to Football Shootball every Wednesday on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Have you ever wondered how successful people do their thing? How do they navigate the challenges they often face? Are you wondering about the future of restaurants, film, education, technology, and everything else in between? Hi, I'm Gauri Devidyal, best known for being one of the brains behind The Table, an award-winning restaurant in Bombay. One thing my life as a restaurateur has given me is the opportunity to meet with some truly inspiring people, most often just by chatting with strangers at the community table. And that's what this podcast is about. It's about learning the new dimensions of business and understanding how different people swim this sea. It's an opportunity for me to pick their brains and ask them all the questions on my mind, whether it's about learning from their past experiences or talking about future trends. Through their journeys, stories, and insights, I hope you too, like me, will come away inspired and energized. So come, join me every Wednesday with your favorite drink, because this round is on me.